film story is made up as it's going because it depends on the light and the atmosphere in that light, of which, as we were talking before we started filming, no matter how extraordinary a director is, you can't control those elements, and eventually, even if you have unlimited resources, it changes, and it just has this strange life of its own, and you're really participating in the creation that's largely unknown.
Hello everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video review, and we sadly have to reflect on the recent news that Hollywood actor Val Kilmer has passed away at the age of 65 years old. Announcement confirmed early in the hours of Wednesday the 2nd of April 2025, and whilst the details of the death haven't yet been confirmed, it has been related to a case of pneumonia. We know that he did have a multi-year battle against throat cancer, which rendered his ability to speak, and he required to have an electric voice box plugged in his lower throat. So, of course, many condolences go out to both his friends and family at this very sad time, and there have been multiple tributes since honouring the actor and his overall career. And when looking back at Val Kilmer's career, I always thought of him as a mysterious actor who clearly had the look of a typical Hollywood movie star and definitely had prolific highs, particularly in the early to mid 1990s, and definitely had some moments of greatness within his filmography. Born in Los Angeles in California on December 31st, 1959, he entered the world of acting within the early 1980s in a series of Broadway and television roles. He then had early films such as Top Secret and Real Genius, and actually very interestingly, he turned down opportunities to star in Francis Ford Coppola's The Outsiders and also David Lynch's Blue Velvet, both movies which have gained a cult status from the particular decade. So that was very interesting to see how exactly his career would have played out had he participated in either of those films. However, as we move throughout the 1980s, his big breakthrough finally came in 1986 with the much pop culture blockbuster Top Gun. In a US force drama, he starred alongside Tom Cruise, playing rival air pilot Tom Iceman Kaczynski. And whilst Cruise was the headline star, Kilmer makes a good enough impression in the film, especially with the scenes that they have together. And the film went on to become the highest grossing event of that particular year. But despite that, Kilmer didn't quite maximise off the success shortly after. Yes, he did star in George Lucas's fantasy story Willow in 1988, which really is a movie that you have much more nostalgic memories of, rather than it being a high quality film, especially if you grew up in that decade. Now, as mentioned, it was the 1990s where his career really took off and transcended in many ways with some truly great performances. We start off with, for me personally, his greatest performance, and that was starring in the lead role as Jim Morrison in Oliver Stone's very much psychedelic biopic The Doors, charting the highs and the lows of the famous group that emanated from the late 1960s and 70s, where Jim Morrison is very much the central focus. And Kilmer transforms and channels the energy and embodiment of the rock star to incredible effect. He looks like Jim and he sounds like Jim, very much to the point where the other band members had a difficult time telling the difference between his vocals and Jim Morrison's vocals when they heard his initial voice recordings. It's a stunning portrayal for what is a flawed movie, but Kilmer is absolutely amazing and definitely deserved, at the very least, a Best Actor Oscar nomination. He then had a far more quieter role in the mystery crime thriller Thunderheart, released in 1992. And then we go on to perhaps his most famous and most resonant role in the absolute epic western Tombstone from 1993. Starring as the gambling gunslinger Doc Holliday, who fights alongside Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp and his brothers Virgil and Morgan against the cowboy criminal elements within Dodge City. Still one of the greatest westerns of all time, and in the role of Doc Holliday, Kilmer just exhibits an endless likability and charisma, stealing every scene that he's in. The character had some extra depth with his ongoing battle against tuberculosis, even more cathartic now given his recent passing, and overall he has a great dynamic with all actors, especially with Kurt Russell, as the two play the lead characters. And of course, he reached cultural status with his performance and his iconic accent and the delivery of the classic line, "I'm your Huckleberry," which literally every movie fan relates to when talking about this film. and they absolutely love his performance, as do I, and it's definitely a massive point within his career. And shortly after this, his career would hit its commercial peak, where in June 1995 he took on the role as Batman in Joel Schumacher's 1990 film Batman Forever, which saw the Caped Crusader take on villains such as Two-Face and the Riddler, alongside Chris O'Donnell's Robin. Now, for me, the entry is still a disappointing step down after the first two epic Tim Burton films, but Kilmer in the role is actually very good as Bruce Wayne, with more focus on his reflection within his parents' death, and physically he certainly had the look of the Caped Crusader. But despite that, the movie still turned out to be one of the biggest successes within 1995, and I've always felt that a better tone and direction would have suited Kilmer much more, and perhaps would have led him to continue the role post the success of this entry. He would then go on to star in one of the greatest films of the 1990s in Michael Mann's epic crime action Heat. This saw the focused cop Al Pacino chasing down methodical bank robber Robert De Niro. And obviously the film is driven by both their performances and presence, but Kilmer still holds his own in a solid supporting performance as Chris, one of the robbery crew members, and he performs well in another standout entry within his career. We then look at, for me, definitely one of the most underrated films in The Ghost and the Darkness. In 1996, where Kilmer stars alongside Michael Douglas in the 18th century Africa as bounty hunters tracking down murderous lions, and it's an epic old school action adventure full of action and intensity with great sequences. Val Kilmer is very much the lead role here, and it's definitely an underappreciated movie that deserved more recognition both during and after its release. Probably his last most high-profile role came in 1997's The Saint, which was a big-budget reboot of Roger Moore's television spy series. Starring alongside Elizabeth Shue, this enjoyed a decent box office success, but as he went on into the 2000s decade, his profile and roles did tend to diminish, though there were some good supporting performances in Denzel Washington's Deja Vu, and also starring alongside Robert Downey Jr. in a critically acclaimed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Now, as mentioned, he sadly contracted throat cancer within early 2014, and despite various degrees of recovery, the effects took their toll on him physically as the disease progressed. And he would go on to participate in his last two screen roles, which involved the crime drama Pay Dirt in 2020, where he stars alongside his daughter. He then returned with Tom Cruise in the long anticipated sequel Top Gun Maverick in 2022, with some very admittedly poignant and sad scenes as he revived the role of Iceman, and his involvement definitely gave the movie a certain weight and emotional depth, no doubt about it. So overall, very sad to see Val Kilmer pass away, and 2025 is proving to be a very solemn and reflective year where we are seeing these high prolific actors and classic performers come to the end, and it's yet again another reminder of how we need to appreciate these movie legends whilst they are still with us, and it's always good to reflect on the great movies and performances throughout their overall career. So very sad then to see Val Kilmer, a very well liked and referred to actor, pass away sadly at the age of 65 years old.